I overheard my husband's phone call while pretending to nap and discovered he'd been planning my accident for months. It started as one of those lazy Sunday afternoons where the autumn light filtered through our living room windows, casting everything in golden hues that should have felt peaceful. Wayne thought I was asleep on the couch, curled under my grandmother's hand-stitched quilt, the one with tiny purple flowers that she'd worked on during her final months in the nursing home. I'd been fighting a splitting migraine since dawn, the kind that made my vision blur and my stomach churn, accompanied by that familiar nausea that always came with my worst headaches. When Wayne suggested I rest while he handled some business calls, I gratefully closed my eyes and let the pain medication pull me towards sleep, or so he thought. I was floating in that strange half-awake state, somewhere between consciousness and dreams, when his voice drifted from the kitchen, low and careful. At first, it sounded like any other work conversation. Wayne owned Hawthorne Construction, a small company that specialized in residential renovations, always dealing with subcontractors, permits, and building inspections. His voice carried that familiar professional tone I'd heard thousands of times over our 22 years of marriage, the same tone he used when discussing foundation problems or roof repairs with clients. But something felt different. Something in the way he kept his voice deliberately quiet, almost whispering, made my body tense beneath the quilt. The brake lines are the cleanest option, he was saying, his words measured and deliberate. Make it look like natural wear and tear. Nothing suspicious that would trigger an investigation. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. Every muscle in my body screamed to sit up, to demand answers, to confront him right then and there. Instead, I forced my breathing to remain deep and steady, fighting every survival instinct that told me to run as far and as fast as I could. She takes that mountain road to her sister's house every Wednesday morning, Wayne continued, his voice so calm and matter-of-fact it made my skin crawl. Same time, same route. Been doing it religiously for 3 years now, ever since her mother passed away. Never deviates from the schedule. Never takes alternate routes. I wanted to vomit. That winding mountain road to visit my sister Vera. Highway 47 with its hairpin turns and steep drop-offs into the valley below. The route I'd driven every single Wednesday since Mom's funeral, because Vera and I had promised each other over Mom's casket that we'd never let grief pull us apart the way it had destroyed our cousins' relationships after their parents died. I'd always been extra careful on that road, knowing how dangerous it could be in bad weather, how many accidents had happened on those curves over the years. The insurance policy pays double for accidental death, Wayne's voice continued, and I could hear him moving around the kitchen, probably pacing between the island and the sink the way he always did when he was working through complex problems. $200,000 versus the standard life insurance, which only covers natural causes and has that 2-year suicide clause we'd have to wait out. My hands started trembling uncontrollably beneath the quilt. $200,000. That's what my life was worth to him. 22 years of marriage, of shared dreams and struggles and intimate moments, reduced to a dollar amount on an insurance policy. Tomorrow's Tuesday, he said, and I could hear the satisfaction creeping into his voice like poison. I'll handle it Tuesday night when she's at her book club meeting. She never gets home before 10:30 on Tuesdays. Gives me plenty of time to work. Wednesday morning, problem solved. Clean, simple, untraceable. The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing in my chest and stealing my breath. My heart hammered so violently against my ribs, I was certain he'd hear it from the kitchen. This wasn't some desperate spur-of-the-moment decision born from financial pressure or temporary insanity. This was calculated, planned, methodical. He'd been studying my routine, timing my habits, analyzing my schedule, preparing to murder me with the same careful attention to detail he used for construction projects. What about afterward? I heard him ask, and realized someone else was on the line. I mean, how long before someone finds her? My stomach lurched. He was discussing the discovery of my body like it was a logistical problem to solve. The road curves around Miller's Bend about 2 miles before it straightens out toward town, Wayne continued. There's that steep drop-off where the guardrail was damaged in last winter's storm and never properly repaired. If the brakes fail there, the car would go right over the edge. Probably wouldn't be found for hours. Maybe not until evening when Vera starts wondering why I haven't called to check if she made it home safely. The level of detail was horrifying. He'd not only planned my death, but calculated exactly how long my body would lie broken in a ravine before anyone discovered the wreckage. Insurance investigates all accidental deaths, the voice on the other end said. A man's voice I didn't recognize. But if the brake failure looks natural, if there's no evidence of tampering, they'll process the claim without much scrutiny, especially with no history of marital problems or financial motives. Wayne chuckled, actually chuckled, at this assessment of how easy it would be to get away with murdering me. That's the beauty of it, he said. We've been the perfect couple for over 20 years. Everyone in town knows how devoted I am to Delia. Her death will be tragic, but no one will suspect anything other than a terrible accident. The casual cruelty of hearing my own name spoken in the context of my planned murder made bile rise in my throat. The phone call ended with a soft click. I heard his footsteps crossing the hardwood floor, coming toward the living room where I lay pretending to sleep. Each footfall sounded unnaturally loud in my ears, like thunder announcing an approaching storm. Hey there, sweetheart. Wayne's voice was gentle and loving as he perched on the edge of the couch and shook my shoulder with what seemed like genuine tender concern. How's that headache? You feeling any better now? I opened my eyes and looked up at the face I'd trusted completely for over 2 decades. The same warm brown eyes that had gazed at me lovingly on our wedding day in the little chapel outside town. The same hands that had held mine through my father's sudden heart attack. My mother's slow, painful decline from cancer. Every crisis and celebration we'd weathered together as a team. And now those hands were planning to kill me. Much better, I managed to say, forcing my voice to sound sleepy and content while my mind raced with terror. The rest really helped. That medication Dr. Patterson prescribed is amazing. Wayne smiled and brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. The gesture so familiar and loving that for a split second, I wondered if I'd somehow misheard the conversation. Maybe I'd been dreaming. Maybe the migraine medication had caused hallucinations. But the cold certainty in my gut told me otherwise. Good. I'm glad, he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. I was thinking we could order Chinese tonight from that place you love downtown. The one with the amazing sweet and sour chicken. My last meal, I thought with crystal clarity. He's planning what he thinks will be my last meal. That sounds absolutely perfect. I said, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my throat like a living thing. Wayne stood up and stretched, looking every inch the caring, devoted husband. I've got some paperwork to finish up in the office. Then we'll have a nice quiet evening together. I watched him walk away, noting details I'd never paid attention to before. The slight limp in his left leg from an old construction accident, the way he favored his right shoulder when lifting heavy objects, the scar on his knuckles from a mishap with a circular saw 3 years ago. If I was going to survive this, I needed to start thinking like him, calculating, observing, planning. That evening, we shared our Chinese takeout at the kitchen table while rain drummed against the windows. Wayne was more attentive than he'd been in months, asking about my day, telling stories about his work crew, laughing at my jokes. Under normal circumstances, I would have been delighted by the attention. Instead, every smile felt like a mask. Every tender gesture felt like manipulation. You know what I was thinking today? Wayne said, twirling lo mein noodles around his fork. We should take that vacation we've been talking about. Maybe somewhere warm this winter, Florida or the Caribbean, a vacation he knew I'd never live to take. That sounds wonderful, I said, playing along with his charade. We haven't had a real vacation in years. I'll start looking at packages tomorrow, he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. We deserve some time together, just the two of us. After dinner, Wayne settled into his recliner to watch the Sunday night football game while I cleaned up the kitchen. Every ordinary domestic action felt surreal, like I was performing in a play where only I knew the tragic ending. Loading the dishwasher, wiping down the counters, putting away leftovers that Wayne thought I'd never eat. That night, I lay awake beside him in our king-size bed, listening to his peaceful, rhythmic breathing while staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. How could he sleep so soundly while planning to murder his wife? How could his conscience be so clear? I studied his face in the pale moonlight streaming through our bedroom windows. The same face I'd kissed goodnight for over 2 decades. The face I'd memorized in every mood and expression. When had he stopped loving me? When had I transformed from his partner into an obstacle worth eliminating? Had there been signs I'd missed? Red flags I'd ignored in my trusting naivety? I thought back over recent months, searching for clues I might have dismissed. Wayne had been working longer hours, claiming the construction business was booming. He'd been more interested in our finances lately, asking detailed questions about my teacher's pension and the life insurance policies we'd taken out years ago. He'd encouraged me to maintain my routines, particularly my Wednesday visits to Vera, always asking about my exact departure and arrival times. I'd attributed all of this to normal life changes, a successful business, responsible financial planning, caring concern for my well-being. Now I saw it all as evidence of a calculated plan to murder me. The questions tormented me through the longest night of my life. The next morning, Wayne was unusually attentive in a way that now felt sinister. He brought me coffee in bed, perfectly prepared with 2 sugars and a splash of cream just the way I liked it. He kissed my forehead and told me he loved me. His performance so flawless it would have fooled anyone who hadn't overheard that phone call. I've got a really long day ahead of me, he said, straightening his navy work shirt and checking his appearance in our dresser mirror. The Henderson renovation is behind schedule, and we've got that inspection coming up Thursday. Might be working late tonight on the electrical issues. Working late, right. He'd be working late sabotaging my brake lines. Of course, honey, I said, sitting up in bed and smiling at him. I'll probably read for a while after book club anyway. That new mystery novel Patricia recommended. What time does book club usually end? He asked casually, as if he didn't already know my schedule by heart. Around 10, sometimes 10:30 if we get really into the discussion, I replied, noting how he nodded with satisfaction. After he left for work, I sat alone in our kitchen, surrounded by 22 years of accumulated memories. Wedding photos magnetted to the refrigerator showing us young and radiant and hopelessly in love. His favorite coffee mug sitting next to mine in the sink, still stained with this morning's coffee. The ceramic owl figurine I'd bought him for our 10th anniversary, perched on the windowsill where it had watched over us through countless ordinary mornings just like this one. Everything looked normal, everything looked safe, but underneath the familiar domestic tranquility, I could feel the foundation of my entire life crumbling. I had 2 choices: run or fight. Running meant abandoning everything. Our home, my job at the county library where I'd worked for 15 years, my life here, my sister who depended on our weekly visits to help her cope with her own grief and depression following our mother's death. It meant liquidating whatever assets I could access, draining our joint checking account, and disappearing into anonymity somewhere Wayne could never find me. It meant living in constant fear, always looking over my shoulder, never knowing if he would track me down and find another way to finish what he'd started. Fighting meant staying and trying to outsmart a man who apparently thought I was too naive and trusting to survive without him. It meant gathering evidence, involving law enforcement, and risking everything on the hope that the justice system would protect me from my own husband. I chose to fight, but first, I needed proof. Something more substantial than an overheard phone conversation that could be dismissed as a misunderstanding or taken out of context. I spent the morning systematically searching Wayne's home office, looking through his files, his computer, his desk drawers, anywhere he might have left evidence of his murderous plans. The office had always been Wayne's private domain, and I'd respected that boundary throughout our marriage.